Imagine a young man hailed as America's golden boy, brash, fearless, and hungry for glory, marching boldly toward a destiny that would shock the nation. But what if the hero you thought you knew was blinded by ambition, walking straight into one of the greatest military disasters in U.S. history? In the annals of American military history, few figures shine as brightly or burn as fiercely as George Armstrong Custer. Born the son of a modest farmer in Ohio, Custer's rise to fame was as rapid as it was controversial. A blend of undeniable talent, reckless ambition, and a hunger for glory that often outpaced his prudence. His story begins not on the chaotic plains of the American West, but within the hallowed walls of West Point, where a young man destined for greatness first cut his teeth in the art of war. George Custer entered the United States Military Academy at West Point in 1857, a place known for forging some of the most capable military leaders of the nation. From the outset, Custer's personality was impossible to ignore. Sharp-witted and fiercely bold, he quickly developed a reputation, not only for his military potential, but for his rebellious spirit. He was, by accounts, the cadet with the most disciplinary infractions in the Academy's history up to that time, having been reprimanded over 700 times. This record alone suggests a young man who neither feared authority nor was inclined to bow to the rules blindly. But behind this seemingly undisciplined veneer was an individual with exceptional leadership potential. His instructors and fellow cadets could not deny his battlefield instincts, his courage under fire, and an infectious charisma that rallied those around him. This early duality, the troublemaker with a soldier's soul, would define much of Custer's career and ultimately his tragic end. The outbreak of the American Civil War in 1861 provided the perfect proving ground for this restless spirit. Custer wasted no time in seeking action, quickly distinguishing himself as a brilliant and fearless cavalry officer. Throughout the war, he was known for charging headlong into battle, often placing himself at the very forefront of the conflict. His men admired him for this unwavering bravery, knowing that he would never ask them to undertake a risk he wouldn't face himself. Such loyalty earned him the nickname, the Boy General, as he rapidly ascended the ranks to become one of the youngest generals in U.S. history at just 23 years old. Custer's flamboyant style was as much a part of his legend as his battlefield achievements. His long golden hair and striking uniforms made him an instantly recognizable figure. The press loved him, painting him as a larger-than-life hero who embodied the spirit of American daring and frontier bravery. Perhaps no moment solidified this reputation more than his role at the Battle of Gettysburg in 1863, where his decisive charge helped to hold the Union line at a critical moment, turning the tide of one of the most pivotal battles in the war. But, for all his early successes, Custer's ambition was far from satisfied. The Civil War ended in 1865 with the surrender of Confederate General Robert E. Lee, an event marked by a historic table that would later be gifted to Custer's wife as a testament to his role in securing the Union victory. Yet the young general hungered for more than just the accolades of past triumphs. He yearned for a defining legacy, a place etched in the history books not just as a war hero, but as a conqueror of new frontiers. This longing would lead him westward, to a new and far more complicated battlefield, the vast and untamed American frontier, where the United States was expanding rapidly into territories long held by Native American tribes. Here, Custer's daring and desire for glory met a far more complex challenge, a conflict defined not just by military might but by cultural clashes, political intrigue, and moral ambiguity. Assigned to lead the 7th Cavalry Regiment, Custer's mission was to suppress the resistance of Native American tribes defending their ancestral lands. Yet, unlike the more conventional battlefields of the Civil War, this war was as much about survival and identity as it was about territorial control. Custer's approach was often marked by impatience and a relentless drive for quick victories, qualities that earned him both admiration and criticism from contemporaries. Understanding Custer's early life and meteoric rise is crucial to grasping the tragic arc of his career. His childhood, marked by a keen intellect and a competitive streak, laid the foundation for a man who viewed life through the lens of ambition and risk-taking. His time at West Point revealed a personality that thrived on challenge but chafed against limits. The Civil War gave him the stage to prove his mettle, earning loyalty from his men and respect from his superiors. However, this same boldness that propelled him forward would later become his undoing. The hunger for glory blinded him to the nuances and dangers of the new conflicts in the West. His story is not just of a hero but also of a flawed man whose greatest strengths were shadowed by fatal overconfidence. As we delve deeper into the complex dynamics between Custer, the Native American tribes, and the unfolding drama of the American frontier, it is essential to remember that the tale of this young general is woven with both valor and tragedy. His beginnings are a testament to the heights a man can reach when driven by purpose, but also a warning of the perils when ambition eclipses caution. This portrait of Custer sets the stage for the turbulent chapters to come, a story where history's brightest lights cast the darkest shadows. As the United States relentlessly pushed westward in the late 19th century, the lands that once belonged to Native American tribes became the new prize in an expanding nation's quest for wealth, security, and manifest destiny. Among the most contested and sacred of these lands were the Black Hills, a region revered by the Sioux and other tribes as sacred ground. But for the U.S. government and settlers, the Black Hills represented untapped resources, especially after gold was rumored and then confirmed to exist there. This clashing of values and ambitions ignited a fierce struggle that would ultimately shape the fate of the Plains Indians and the course of American history. The 1868 Treaty of Fort Laramie was a pivotal moment in this story, a fragile attempt to establish peace by recognizing Native American rights to certain lands while demanding their relocation to reservations. Officially, this treaty granted the Sioux full control over the Black Hills, in exchange for their promise to cease hostilities and remain within designated boundaries. However, beneath the formal language lay deep fractures and deception. The United States government had little intention of honoring the treaty in the long term. Political leaders and settlers viewed the Black Hills as too valuable to relinquish, and the discovery of gold only intensified the rush to claim these lands. This contradiction set the stage for a cycle of broken promises and escalating violence. For many Sioux, the treaty was a temporary shield, one they knew would not hold against the tide of expansion. At the heart of the Native American resistance stood Chief Sitting Bull, a man of profound wisdom, spiritual depth, and unwavering resolve. Unlike the brash and impatient Custer, Sitting Bull embodied patience and careful calculation. He was not only a warrior but also a spiritual leader who claimed to receive visions from the Great Spirit guiding his people through uncertain times. Sitting Bull foresaw the consequences of ceding territory and submitting to U.S. demands. His refusal to accept the treaty was a stand for his people's survival, culture, and freedom. Gathering allies among the Lakota Sioux, Cheyenne, and other tribes, he forged a coalition determined to resist the relentless encroachment. This alliance was no small feat. The tribes had long-standing rivalries and different traditions, yet the looming threat united them in common purpose. Sitting Bull's leadership inspired not just warriors, but entire communities to prepare for the coming storm. His vision was clear: to defend their way of life at any cost. Among his closest advisors was Gall, a Lakota warrior whose tactical skills complemented Sitting Bull's spiritual leadership. Together, they orchestrated raids on U.S. settlements and rival tribes who sided with the government, such as the Crow and Arikara. These actions were not random acts of violence but strategic moves to disrupt the expanding American presence and protect their lands. The U.S. government, alarmed by these raids and the growing resistance, saw only one solution: to send in a strong military force capable of crushing the Native American coalition. George Custer and his 7th Cavalry were chosen for this task, a man whose reputation for daring made him the government's golden boy, yet whose impatience would prove fatal. But the stakes were much higher than a simple military campaign. This was a battle for identity, land, and survival. The Native Americans fought not only with weapons, but with a deep connection to their heritage and spiritual beliefs. Their unity was forged in shared hardship and the collective will to remain free nomads on the plains. Sitting Bull's camp, sprawling across miles near the Yellowstone River, became a symbol of Native American resilience. Thousands gathered prepared to face the inevitable confrontation. This was their last summer as free people, aware that failure meant not only defeat but the erasure of their culture. The tension before the battle was palpable. The U.S. forces believed their superior training and numbers would guarantee victory. Yet Sitting Bull's warriors, inspired by visions and fierce determination, proved to be an unpredictable and formidable opponent. Their knowledge of the terrain and guerrilla tactics gave them an edge that the American military underestimated. Amid this brewing storm, internal challenges complicated matters. Within Custer's ranks, officers like Major Marcus Reno and Captain Frederick Benteen expressed frustration with Custer's arrogance and reckless decision-making. These tensions foreshadowed the lack of unity that would later contribute to the tragic outcome. The cultural gulf between the Americans and Native Americans was vast. Where Custer saw an enemy to be defeated and land to be claimed, Sitting Bull saw invaders threatening a sacred way of life. This fundamental difference fueled a conflict that no treaty could resolve. This segment of the story highlights the collision of two worlds, one determined to expand at any cost, the other determined to resist and preserve its existence. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test the limits of leadership, courage, and the human spirit. Understanding the tensions and motivations on both sides adds depth to the narrative. It moves beyond simple black and white portrayals to reveal a complex human drama. This is not merely a story of conquest and defeat, but of identity, faith, and the tragic consequences when cultures clash under the pressures of history. As we prepare to examine the fateful battle itself, it is crucial to hold in mind the hopes, fears, and convictions that drove both Custer and Sitting Bull. Their destinies intertwined in conflict illuminate the broader story of America's westward expansion and the enduring legacy of those who fought to define it. George Armstrong Custer's transition from the battlefields of the Civil War to the vast plains of the American West marked a new chapter both for him personally and for the United States. His ambition had not waned. If anything, it burned brighter, as he sought to carve out a legendary place in the history of the nation. But the challenges he faced in the West were far different from those he had overcome before. They required more than bold charges and fearless leadership. They demanded strategic patience, cultural understanding, and political savvy, areas where Custer's impulsiveness would soon prove costly. After the Civil War, Custer was assigned command of the 7th Cavalry Regiment, a unit tasked with the difficult job of pacifying the Native American tribes who stood in the way of American expansion. This role was not one Custer relished. He reportedly despised the assignment, feeling that it offered fewer opportunities for the glory he craved. Yet, despite his misgivings, he threw himself into the campaign, leading aggressive expeditions aimed at breaking the resistance of the Plains Indians. Custer's military tactics during this period reflected his characteristic bravado and eagerness for swift victories. In 1868, his campaign took a dark turn during a brutal attack on a Cheyenne village along the Washita River. At dawn, Custer and his men charged into the camp, killing over 100 Cheyenne, many of whom were non-combatants, including women and children. Custer lauded this as a glorious success, but the attack had devastating consequences beyond the immediate loss of life. Unbeknownst to Custer, the village he had destroyed was friendly to the United States, and this brutal assault made peace, negotiations with other Cheyenne tribes nearly impossible. Worse, it ignited a fierce backlash. Word spread quickly, uniting other villages into a defensive coalition ready to resist further incursions. The immediate tactical victory thus sowed the seeds for prolonged conflict, illustrating Custer's failure to grasp the complex social and political realities of the Native American world. Compounding these strategic missteps was Custer's fractious relationship with several key officers under his command. Major Joel Elliott, who had led a separate pursuit during the Washita attack, disappeared and was later found dead along with his men. Many blamed Custer for abandoning Elliott's detachment prematurely, accusing him of reckless overreach. Captain Frederick Benteen was one of the most vocal critics, openly challenging Custer's decisions. This internal dissent sowed discord within the ranks, undermining the cohesion vital for survival in hostile territory. Despite the criticism, Custer remained popular with much of his regiment and the American public. The press celebrated him as the heroic boy general, and political leaders admired his aggressive posture. Yet beneath the surface, tensions simmered. His impatience with caution, disdain for advice, and relentless pursuit of personal glory alienated allies and weakened his command structure. In 1873, Custer was permanently stationed at Fort Abraham, Lincoln in Dakota Territory, where the conflict with Native American tribes intensified. There he was joined by figures like Major Marcus Reno, a man plagued by alcoholism and an equally contentious relationship with Custer. Reno's presence further complicated the command dynamics, contributing to a fractured leadership that would later play a critical role in the fate of the 7th Cavalry. At Fort Abraham Lincoln, Custer also formed alliances beyond the ranks of white soldiers. Notably, Bloody Knife, a mixed-heritage scout with a personal vendetta against Sitting Bull and his Lieutenant Gall, became Custer's trusted informant. Bloody Knife's intimate knowledge of the land and native strategies provided an edge, but his own bitter history with Sitting Bull added another layer of complexity to the conflict. In 1874, Custer led an expedition into the Black Hills, officially to scout for a military fort but primarily to confirm rumors of gold deposits. The expedition turned into a sensationalized media event, with photographers and reporters accompanying the troops to document their discovery. This sparked a gold rush that brought thousands of settlers into the region, effectively violating the Fort Laramie Treaty and escalating tensions dramatically. The government's tacit approval of the settlers' incursion, combined with President Ulysses S. Grant's administration's aggressive policies, left the Sioux and their allies with little choice but to resist. Sitting Bull's warnings about inevitable American aggression proved tragically prescient. Throughout this period, Custer remained focused on seizing his chance for fame. His determination to finish the job against Sitting Bull and the resistant tribes consumed him. However, his leadership style, marked by impulsiveness, overconfidence, and a hunger for immediate results, clashed with the realities of guerrilla warfare and the vastness of the territory. The internal friction among his officers worsened. Reno and Benteen's disdain for Custer's arrogance threatened the unity of the 7th Cavalry. Yet these divisions were largely ignored by higher command and the media, who preferred the romanticized image of Custer as an intrepid frontier hero. This disconnect between image and reality would prove fatal. Custer's failure to build consensus among his commanders, combined with underestimating the resolve and numbers of Native American forces, set the stage for the disastrous campaign that followed. This segment reveals Custer as a complex figure, brave and charismatic but flawed by hubris and a short-sighted focus on personal glory. His military victories masked underlying strategic failures, and his inability to manage internal conflicts undermined his effectiveness. As we prepare to explore the fateful campaign against Sitting Bull's forces, it is essential to understand how these personal and tactical flaws contributed directly to the unfolding tragedy. Custer was a man caught between ambition and the harsh realities of a changing world, a figure both shaped by and shaping the turbulent history of America's westward expansion. The summer of 1876 was marked by a sense of inevitable confrontation, a collision course set between the United States Army, under the command of General George Armstrong Custer, and the Native American coalition led by the indomitable Sitting Bull. This campaign would not only determine control over the contested lands but also decide the fate of a way of life teetering on the edge of extinction. The decisions made and the attitudes displayed during these months would culminate in a moment forever etched in history: the Battle of Little Bighorn. After years of escalating tensions, the U.S. government delivered an ultimatum to the Native American tribes in late 1875. They demanded that all Lakota Sioux and Cheyenne who refused to relocate to reservations by January 1876 would be considered hostile and subject to military action. This decree, given in the dead of winter, was both impractical and cruel, forcing tribes to move across frozen landscapes or face destruction. For Sitting Bull and his followers, compliance was not an option. Survival demanded resistance. General Alfred Terry, a supporter and friend of Custer, was appointed to lead the overall campaign against Sitting Bull's forces. The plan was ambitious and complex. 3 separate columns of the U.S. Army would converge on the native encampment, cutting off any escape routes and forcing a decisive battle. Custer and his 7th Cavalry were assigned a critical role, moving along the Yellowstone River from the Dakota side, tasked with pursuing and engaging the hostile tribes. The intelligence gathered before the campaign painted a picture of a sizable and well-prepared native force. Reports indicated thousands of warriors and non-combatants gathered in camps near the confluence of several rivers, including the Powder, Tongue, Rosebud, and Bighorn. These tribes were united not only by circumstance, but by a shared determination, fueled by Sitting Bull's spiritual guidance and the stirring leadership of warriors like Crazy Horse. Despite this, Custer's attitude remained one of unshakable confidence. Some would say recklessness. He was known for his refusal to wait for reinforcements, his eagerness to seize glory whenever it presented itself, and his stubborn belief that swift, aggressive action would crush the resistance. His officers and men had repeatedly warned him about the risks of rushing into battle unprepared, but Custer's determination to be the first to engage was relentless. General Terry and the other commanding officers were cautious, urging coordination and patience. Yet, Custer, true to his reputation, often diverged from the larger strategic plan. His penchant for hunting and exploring the wilderness with his brothers during the campaign, though perhaps a personal coping mechanism, frustrated his peers and commanders. The tensions within the command were growing, foreshadowing the discord that would impact the battle's outcome. The expedition that summer was marked by a series of maneuvers and engagements, but none so critical as the encounter that awaited Custer near the Little Bighorn River. As scouts, including Bloody Knife, relayed warnings about the size and strength of the native encampment, Custer's confidence did not waver. When advised to wait for the arrival of General Terry and other reinforcements, Custer famously dismissed the caution, declaring that he would not share the glory. Custer's plan was to divide his regiment into several battalions, attacking the encampment from multiple directions to overwhelm the native forces. 5 companies would cross the river and attack from the north. Major Reno would strike from the south, and Captain Benteen would circle around to attack the western flank. However, underlying mistrust and animosity between these officers complicated coordination. As Custer and his men approached the encampment, he encountered what appeared to be a modest-sized village. The moment he crested the ridge overlooking the camp and saw the vast expanse of tents stretching for miles, the reality hit him with a jarring force. There were far more native warriors than anticipated, likely numbering in the thousands, not hundreds. Despite the stark evidence, Custer chose to proceed with the attack. With a wave of his hat and a shout of "Hurrah, boys, we've got them!" he charged down the hill. This moment, simultaneously full of bravado and fatal miscalculation, would seal the fate of Custer and his regiment. The initial assault caught the camp by surprise, but native warriors, led by Sitting Bull, Gall, and the fearless Crazy Horse, quickly mobilized a fierce and coordinated defense. What followed was a brutal and chaotic battle, with each side fighting desperately for survival. Major Reno, crossing the river from the south, faced immediate and fierce resistance. His forces were unprepared for the coordinated counterattack and soon found themselves pinned down. Bloody Knife, leading scouts alongside Reno, was shot dead early in the battle, his loss a devastating blow to morale. Panic and confusion spread among Reno's men as they scrambled to regroup and retreat across the river. Captain Benteen, further west, delayed his advance despite receiving orders to support Reno and Custer, choosing caution over immediate engagement. This hesitation later drew harsh criticism, but the fractured command structure and distrust clouded decision-making at a critical juncture. Meanwhile, Custer pressed on with 5 companies into the heart of the camp, only to find himself and his men outnumbered and surrounded. Lieutenant Calhoun and his men secured a hilltop position that would later bear his name. while Custer and the majority retreated to a ridge now known as Last Stand Hill. The Native American warriors, mounted and relentless, encircled Custer's position, cutting off any possibility of escape or reinforcement. The battle devolved into close-quarters combat, a desperate fight amid a storm of bullets and arrows. The chaos was such that even native warriors occasionally struck their own in the confusion. Within a matter of hours, every soldier under Custer's command was killed. The identity of the last man standing remains unknown, shrouded in the fog of battle and legend. Sitting Bull later recounted tales told to him by his warriors, describing a scene where Custer's long golden hair stood out like a sheath of corn, surrounded by fallen comrades. This defeat, later known as Custer's Last Stand, shocked the nation. For many Americans, the loss was incomprehensible. A force they believed unbeatable had been overwhelmed by native forces they underestimated. The harsh reality of the frontier war pierced the illusion of unstoppable progress. The events of that day highlighted the consequences of overconfidence, fragmented leadership, and underestimating a determined opponent. Custer's decision to attack without waiting for support, coupled with existing tensions among his officers, spelled disaster. The campaign of 1876 and the Battle of Little Bighorn remain a poignant example of how hubris and miscalculation can lead to catastrophe. But beyond the military aspects, this moment was also a cultural and spiritual victory for Sitting Bull and his people. A brief but powerful stand against the tide of displacement and cultural erasure. As we move to understand the aftermath and legacy of this battle, it is vital to appreciate the human stories on all sides. The ambition, fear, courage, and tragedy that intertwined to shape one of the most iconic moments in American history. The afternoon of June 25, 1876, would forever be etched into American memory as the day when General George Armstrong Custer and his 7th Cavalry met their tragic fate. What began as a bold charge quickly transformed into a desperate struggle for survival, culminating in one of the most infamous military defeats in U.S. history. The Battle of Little Bighorn, often romanticized as Custer's Last Stand, was marked by chaos, bravery, and a harrowing demonstration of Native American resistance that shattered the myth of American invincibility. After cresting the ridge overlooking the vast Native American encampment, Custer was immediately struck by the sheer scale of what lay before him. Thousands of lodges stretched over 3 miles filled with warriors and their families. His initial assessment, likely influenced by his relentless desire for swift glory, was to launch a surprise attack without waiting for reinforcements. From Captains Benteen and Major Reno, Custer split his forces. 5 companies under his personal command would attack from the north. Major Reno would strike from the south with 3 companies. Captain Benteen was to circle around the western flank with the remaining companies. This division of forces, though tactically sensible in theory, was fraught with risk, especially given the tenuous relationships and mistrust among the officers. Major Reno was the first to engage, crossing the Little Bighorn River with about 150 men. Initial encounters with native warriors quickly escalated into fierce combat. Reno's men were ill-prepared for the intensity of the resistance, and soon the battle turned against them. The native warriors, led by Sitting Bull's coalition, and energized by the spiritual fervor of the Sundance ceremony, fought with coordinated ferocity. Bloody Knife, a scout and trusted ally of Custer, was among the first casualties, his death a devastating blow to morale. As Reno's forces retreated, chaotically across the river and up the steep banks, panic gripped the soldiers. Many abandoned their horses and weapons, only to be picked off by warriors waiting on the opposite shore. The retreat was a desperate scramble, with men falling under a hail of bullets and arrows. Captain Benteen, hearing the sounds of battle and commands from Custer, hesitated. Despite receiving orders to support Reno and engage the enemy, he delayed his advance. This hesitation, whether born of caution or indecision, has been debated by historians ever since. Regardless, it left Reno's men isolated and vulnerable, facing overwhelming numbers without backup. Meanwhile, Custer led his 5 companies deeper into the heart of the native encampment. His plan appeared to be to capture women and children, to force Sitting Bull to surrender, a tactic he had used previously. But the reality was far grimmer. The sheer number of native warriors, estimated to be around 2,000, was far beyond Custer's expectations. The battle at what is now called Last Stand Hill was brutal and chaotic. Surrounded on all sides, Custer and his men fought fiercely, but the odds were insurmountable. Lieutenant Calhoun and his company made a valiant stand atop a nearby hill that would later bear his name, holding off attackers in a desperate last defense. Accounts from native warriors describe intense close combat amid the smoke and dust, with bullets and arrows flying wildly. The chaos was so extreme that friendly fire incidents occurred, tragic signs of the fierce confusion and determination on both sides. Within a few hours, every soldier under Custer's immediate command had been killed. The long golden hair of the general, his signature feature, was said to have stood out amid the fallen like a sheath of corn. The final moments remained shrouded in mystery, with no definitive record of who fell last or how the last stand concluded. The day's battle was not just a military defeat, but a psychological blow to the American public and government. The news that native forces had annihilated a U.S. regiment, led by one of the nation's most celebrated generals, was met with disbelief, horror, and a profound sense of vulnerability. Critics blamed Custer's recklessness and impatience, arguing that his refusal to wait for reinforcements and his underestimation of the native forces caused the disaster. Others pointed fingers at Reno and Benteen for their failure to coordinate and support Custer's attack, suggesting internal divisions sealed the regiment's fate. Yet beyond personal failings, the battle exposed deeper truths about the nature of the conflict. Sitting Bull and his warriors had proven themselves capable of formidable military resistance, shattering the simplistic narrative of Native Americans as doomed to disappear. Their victory was a statement of survival, culture, and fierce attachment to their lands. As the dust settled, Benteen and Reno's surviving men dug in at what became known as Reno Hill. They held off the native forces throughout the night, under siege and with dwindling supplies, awaiting relief that would arrive only the following day. When Generals Terry and Gibbon finally arrived, they found the grisly aftermath: over 200 bodies of fallen soldiers, many scalped and mutilated. Among them was Custer himself, identified by 2 fatal bullet wounds. The battlefield told a story of heroism, tragedy, and the ultimate cost of miscalculation. This devastating encounter, forever known as Custer's Last Stand, became a symbol of both Native American resistance and the tragic consequences of American expansionism. It highlighted the deadly combination of cultural misunderstanding, leadership failures, and the brutal realities of frontier warfare. The legacy of this battle continues to resonate, a reminder of the human cost behind the myths of conquest and progress. It challenges us to remember not just the names of the fallen generals and soldiers, but the stories of the native peoples defending their homeland against overwhelming odds. The echoes of gunfire that fell silent over Little Bighorn on June 25, 1876, left behind more than a battlefield strewn with fallen soldiers. They left a nation shaken to its core. The aftermath of Custer's Last Stand revealed the stark realities of American expansion, the complexities of leadership and strategy, and the enduring spirit of Native American resistance. What followed was a period of reflection, recrimination, and profound change that would shape the course of the American West for decades to come. When news of the massacre reached the rest of the United States, it sent shockwaves through a country that had long viewed itself as invincible. The death of General Custer, the dashing boy general celebrated in newspapers and popular culture, was almost unimaginable. For many Americans, the defeat challenged the very notion of manifest destiny, the belief that the United States was destined to expand across the continent without obstacle. The government and public responded with a mix of outrage, denial, and a search for blame. Some accused Custer himself of recklessness, arguing that his hunger for personal glory led him to underestimate his enemy and ignore prudent military strategy. Others faulted his subordinates, particularly Major Reno and Captain Benteen, for failing to execute orders and support Custer at critical moments. In reality, the disaster was a convergence of multiple failures, strategic miscalculations, fractured leadership, and a profound underestimation of Native American capabilities. The harsh environment, the vastness of the territory, and the determination of Sitting Bull's coalition combined to create conditions that no single general could easily overcome. Yet few recognized the full significance of the Native American victory. Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse, and their allies had demonstrated extraordinary military skill and unity, rallying thousands of warriors to defend their homeland. Their triumph was a fleeting but powerful assertion of their right to exist as free people. In the immediate aftermath, the U.S. government escalated its military campaigns, determined to crush Native resistance once and for all. The symbolic weight of the defeat galvanized public support for more aggressive policies, leading to increased troop deployments and harsher measures against tribes deemed hostile. For Sitting Bull and his followers, the victory at Little Bighorn was bittersweet. While it bought time and inspired hope, the overwhelming military force eventually bore down. Within 2 years, Sitting Bull surrendered and was imprisoned, and the era of free roaming on the plains came to a tragic close. The lessons of Custer's last stand have reverberated through history, offering insights far beyond the battlefield. It serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of hubris, the fatal consequences when confidence blinds leaders to reality. Custer's story illustrates how ambition and impatience, while powerful motivators, can lead to disaster without careful judgment and collaboration. Moreover, the battle underscores the importance of understanding and respecting one's adversary. The U.S. military's failure to grasp the cultural, spiritual, and tactical dimensions of Native American resistance contributed to their downfall. In contrast, Sitting Bull's leadership, grounded in vision and unity, enabled an outnumbered coalition to prevail against a technologically superior foe. This episode also reminds us of the human cost of conflict, the lives lost on both sides, the families shattered, and the cultures forever altered. The romanticized myths of conquest often obscure these painful realities, but history demands acknowledgement of the complexity and tragedy involved. In the years since, Custer's legacy has been re-examined and debated. Once lauded unequivocally as a hero, modern perspectives paint a more nuanced portrait. A courageous but flawed man whose desire for fame blinded him to the larger consequences of his actions. For Native American communities, the battle remains a symbol of resistance and resilience, a testament to their enduring spirit in the face of overwhelming odds. As we look back on the Custer disaster, it challenges us to reflect on leadership, cultural understanding, and the price of ambition. It urges humility in the face of complexity and respect for those whose lives and histories have often been marginalized. Ultimately, the Battle of Little Bighorn is more than a military event. It is a powerful chapter in the ongoing story of America, reminding us that history is never simple, and every victory or defeat carries profound lessons for those willing to learn.